appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. Big thanks to Salesforce and Sales Hacker for putting this on. It's been a phenomenal event. I hope everybody's getting a lot of great content out of it. I want to introduce our my two co-panelists with me. One of them is Bradley Martin, who is the Vice President of Enterprise Sales over at Adobe Sign. He's been with them for about 5 years. His team manages about 60% of the Fortune accounts. So if you ever have questions about selling to the enterprise, I bet this guy has a lot of answers for you. Lives in Maryland and also has 5 kids. So we appreciate your wife letting you come out here today. So thank you very much. So the other person I want to ask to join us is Will Hunt, who is the VP of Enterprise Sales at Apttus. And he actually is a native New Yorker living here in Chelsea on the High Line. If you haven't been to the High Line in New York, if you're from out of town, absolutely go to it. It's fantastic. And as he's described it earlier, his father is a nuclear scientist and his mother's a psychologist, so you live at the corner of?
The intersection of OCD and psychology.
So he was telling us that his father used to make him, they had to map out where the lights were going to go on the Christmas tree before they could actually put the lights on the Christmas tree every year.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a challenge. And if you haven't seen him, he's got these fantastic, awesome shoes. So be sure you check out his shoes. So have a seat, guys. Let's go have a seat. So our purpose today is to talk about technology. And the one thing when we were setting up this panel, as I said to both guys, I said, I don't want to have a panel about, hey, what's your favorite tool in the sales stack? Because I think we've had that ad nauseum. And I think it's getting to be bigger and a much deeper conversation than, hey, we need these sales efficiency and effectiveness tools. And so really the first question that came up, and we thought about this in terms of depending on what size company you are you a Series A company, you a C, B company, or a C company, or are you a public company? Who should be making the decisions around the sales stack, right? And so I wanted to sort of get their opinions on how they think about looking at tools, and because of what they do, and they are a tool in the stack, what are you guys seeing in the space?
Sure. So for Adobe, Adobe's been around for 33 years this year. It's a very complicated question, right? I wish there was a patent answer where I could, tell our field force these are the 4 people you need to go talk to, and go drive additional revenue for our company. Unfortunately, we all know it doesn't work that way. For Adobe, at any given time, we could have a salesperson that is representing 50+ individual products, right? So obviously, on the one hand, you could have someone who is talking to a head creative who is a very, very different requirement than someone who is out driving a field sales force and trying to find efficiency. And let's talk about e-signature, right? So the one thing that we're always preaching is agility and thinking in advance, right? Because oftentimes we see salespeople can get pulled into, with happy ears, not that any of us have ever had them, but they can get pulled into a sales cycle where they could simply not be talking to the right folks, right?
So for those that don't know Apttus, we are in the quote-to-cash space. I joined the company about 2 years ago, and we've more than doubled the sales org, which left us with a tremendous amount of challenges in terms of scalability. So the benefit of working at a Series C company now about to IPO is that we really are nimble, and we can be like surgeons as we adopt and embrace new technologies. And so I think for us, we were talking back in the room, we've had the ability to really focus on what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, both internally and with our customers, and then sort of reverse pert into what the technology needs to do for us. So those were some of the things that jumped out for me.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity for the audience, how big is the team you guys are each managing? And I know we talked about this earlier that, it doesn't necessarily matter to size, but I think it's always interesting. How big is the team you're working with?
So the East is made up of 4 vice presidents. Each of them have between 5 and 7 sales reps. And then there's a series of overlays and subject matter experts on top of that, in addition to pre-sales.
Right. And how about you?
And for Adobe, because Adobe has so many distinct business units, on the media side, for example, you'll have 6 folks, quota-bearing field folks that would have about 25 of them supporting the enterprise business, right? Adobe is very, very pervasive across the enterprise, so it takes a lot of folks to support those salespeople. But then you're going to also have your folks that are deployed on a sector-by-sector or a product basis, right? Obviously, you're going to have folks in public sector, both state, and then you're going to have your federal teams, and then you're going to have our entire digital marketing team, which again is productized. On the East Coast, and thank goodness all these folks don't report to me, but on the East Coast, Adobe could have upwards of 150 quota-bearing folks, and that could represent several hundred more supporting that on the consulting and engineering side after that.
So I'm gonna flip this a little bit too, and we didn't put this question in, so now you got to make you guys think a little harder. You guys work for large-scale organizations. It's not like a Series A or B company where you got 10 or 15 reps and, oh, I want to put Echo Sign in, right, or Adobe Sign, sorry. What's it look like on the internal side? Like, how does that decision get made? You've got 150 reps on the sales team. Somebody wants a particular tool. Each of you, how does that even happen internally at your organizations when you're that big?
I'm very close to this at my company. Typically, when we look at embracing new technologies within Apttus, we look at, my whole thing is if it can work in New York City, it can work anywhere. Right. So my team is often sort of the test bed to try out the new, whatever it is, whatever business problem we're trying to solve. Right. And I think that it's through very thoughtful understanding of, again, what is the outcome that we're trying to achieve and what's going to back us into that. And we focus on adoption. Okay. And lots of references to find out, how other customers are dealing with the same problem.
Got it. Adobe's a very entrepreneurial and innovative company, and that translates to not just the products that come to market for our customers, but also what we use internally. And the great part about Adobe is if you have an idea and it's a good idea, it gets to the top very, very quickly, right? So for us, it's really a matter of picking up the phone. There are no ivory towers at Adobe. If you have something you think is going to impact the organization, let them know, right? And typically, if it can be done and can be done without slowing us down tremendously, it happens.
Just out of curiosity, and this sort of segues into the question we did talk about is, how many tools do you think a rep can actually navigate efficiently, right? And it could be different for an SDR than an AE. If you're an SDR, you're inside all day, so you do have time to navigate through 5 or 6 or 7 tools. Field reps don't always have that time. What have y'all seen?
I'll take it first. First, it has to be easy, right? We all know that. And then, secondly, there are things that, obviously, if you can show a rep how they're going to make more money, right, you get very rapid adoption, right? That's pretty straightforward. But at the same time, when you work in a big organization, it's about making sure that the reps are aligned with the culture and that culture supports the things that maybe aren't so exciting, like reporting, right? And understanding that the cadence to forecasting is more important oftentimes than the actual deals that are being forecast, right? So there's a lot that goes into it, but the simplest answer to that question is, if there are tools that help reps make more money in an easy way, right, they're going to get adopted very, very quickly, and there's no limit. Each one of us has an iPhone or some type of smartphone. How many apps do we have, right? Uber, the Marriott app, Delta Airlines, bang, 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 and they're simple to use. I think you can keep piling on as long as it's easy and makes your life better.
And I think to add to that, if you can take your most successful reps and look at how they've been successful, and then provide a platform that can replicate that. So what Apttus does in the quote-to-cash space, we look at the most successful reps so we can drive the behaviors that can make other reps successful. So anything to take out the reporting, as you said, but then to take it to the next level now with artificial intelligence coming into play, there are so many things that we can do to automate. I mean, we have reps that you can create a proposal right from your phone by saying, hey, get a proposal for me for this account. for this quantity, or speak into a phone for it. Stuff like that prevents them from having to go back online or to go through a whole approval process just is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. How often do you guys try to implement a new tool? Like how fast can a rep or a team absorb? And as you said, it is about adoption, right? So we want to move fast, we want to move quick. Both of you work for larger companies, but still very nimble and entrepreneurial. How often do you guys try to like every quarter, you like, what process should I fix this quarter? What's out there to do? Like, do you put that much conscious effort into it?
I think for us, it's really about going through the customer experience that we're looking to create for our clients, and we look at our business through their eyes, and then we try to understand where are the gaps, and then embrace technologies that are going to help us, either repair them, make it less transparent, essentially remove all the confusion,
the friction,
the friction, and what's behind the curtain, make that transparent.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, in sales, it's very easy to build up inertia, right? And then inertia comes from a lot of different places. It can be that on the product side, their go-to-market isn't lined up with what's actually happening in the market,
Yep.
okay? And that's going to inhibit implementing something in that go-to-market strategy, right? And typically when you implement that go-to-market strategy, there are usually tools that go along with that strategy, okay? But it's also, one of the things that I've enjoyed so much about working for Adobe is we're a very forward-looking company. Okay, we like to say big windshield, small rearview mirror, right? You learn from your mistakes. You have to get better, but you have to be focused on where you're going. Otherwise, Blockbuster had a really good run, and we all know how that turned out, okay? For Adobe, because we do so many different things, what we're driving toward is if I do something today, it has to align to that future end state, right? And can I really articulate that end state, and is it believable, right?
It's funny you brought up Blockbuster because I just read that Netflix is actually 20 years old this year, and
Crazy.
Which was 1997, and I was like,
Seriously.
oh my God, I had no idea. How often do you try and implement a tool? Like, again, as you're looking at it through the customer's eyes, as you're looking at these different things, what do you see?
I mean, it really depends on whether it's, customer support or whether it's, a lead gen, but, on average, I'd say maybe, one or two, potentially every 6 months, so, and some of those may be very specific, for specific projects, and some are more about, okay, we're changing the way that we're going to market.
Yeah, we'll implement something in a week on a regional basis. If it's Jabber on the network communication side, somebody comes up with that and says, hey, we're using this new tool called Jabber. Great, let's go get a license for it and let's implement it, right? That can happen very, very quickly.
Yeah.
It all depends on, what are you impacting internally, right? If we're talking about a change to our enterprise system of record, okay, like Salesforce, that's going to take a lot more time, right?
Got it. So this is always one of my favorite questions to ask any panel is, it's the FUBAR question, right? Like what have you FUBAR'd in your, whether it's at your current company or a different company when it came to tools, and you don't need to mention names of those companies, but what experiences have you had that you could help other people not share that pain?
How much time do we have?
I know,
Right.
seriously, yeah. So I face this every day, not only, sometimes internally, but with our customers. And the biggest thing that what I've learned is when you're consulting with a company about how they're changing their go-to-market strategy, how their sales teams are going to be aligned, if all they're trying to do is automate the process that exists, then what they could potentially end up with is a broken automated process. And it's really looking at, again, it's so simple. What is the end goal, and reversing into that?
Why do they want to solve that problem?
Whether it's internally, right? And then, and I go back to my, my mother, as a young child with the psychology, thinking, okay, these people that built these applications, it's very personal to them that you're changing their job. It's like you're calling their baby ugly. So there is very much an element in the application space of sort of dancing that where, listen, you did a great job at building it, but you know what? This thing's got one foot in the grave. You got to move on.
Right.
Well, one of the ironies for us, So again, my team has a lot of different product areas that they focus on. Adobe Sign is one of them. We acquired EchoSign years ago, and we've been using it internally for many, many years, but our go-to-market continues to evolve as that space evolves. So one of the biggest mistakes I think we made was when we acquired EchoSign, we thought that the real value to the customer was the actual e-signature, right? It's not. The value to the customer, and yes, there is tremendous value because now I don't have to print, I don't have to scan, I can reach someone on their mobile phone, whether it's for onboarding or a sales contract or whatever. There's tremendous ROI in that. But when you talk to the enterprise, you have to take a step back and say, let's look at the entire process, right? Where does that process begin? Does it begin in Salesforce? Does it begin on paper? And look at what is the value to managing that entire document through to completion. Was there collaboration on the front end? Because now, yes, we can solve a problem that I can get a document back to you in 20 minutes as opposed to 2 days, but that whole process might have taken a month, right? Focus on the month, you increase the ROI and the impact dramatically.
Great, awesome. So where's it going in the future, right? I know this was probably the most fun part of our prep call. So what do you think is going to happen with all these tools? What's on the horizon, and then what's beyond the horizon?
For us, it's artificial intelligence and machine learning. Right. I mean, the things that customers are able to achieve now with sales, like we've developed a technology called Max, which is essentially a conversational intelligent agent, which is sort of like your own personalized inside salesperson to navigate you through a sales process and keep you on point and give you recommendations based on other trends, whether it's internal or external. AI is blowing up the space, and those companies that are embracing it into the culture and using it to knock down new boundaries, it's very exciting for us.
How about you, Brad?
I would go the exact same way. I mean, it's for us. For instance, if you look at our creative business, okay, creative right now is at twice its peak a couple of years ago, right? And the reason for that is because when you can decrease the barrier to entry to any type of technology, smartphones, right? My mom's 74 years old, she has a smartphone, okay? I'm pretty sure we've decreased the barrier to entry, right? But when you decrease the barrier to entry to something, you're going to get that wave of adoption. But to truly bring scale, you have to add automation, and automation means intelligence, okay? Adobe's in a very unique position because in addition to our media business on the digital marketing side, virtually every major retailer and a lot of other folks use our digital marketing solutions, okay? Adobe actually is involved in processing 70 trillion transactions a year. When you hear about Black Friday is going to be up 0.2% this year. It's going to be down 1/3%. It was actually up 2% this year. Everybody sits there and goes, how in the world do they know that? Well, the reason they know that is because every major retailer, when you visit and you're shopping for new Nikes for your kid for Christmas or whatever it is, that monitoring, okay, and then the ultimate transaction and how it happens, we're capturing that, right? So then the question is, yeah, that's great, but how do you harness that to continue to add value to those same customers, okay? And not only are we looking at taking that learning from those transactions to digital marketing, but what we're also doing is we're saying, well, 90% of enterprise content is created with our tools, okay? How can I take that and infuse artificial intelligence? So Adobe launched Adobe Sensei last year, which is artificial intelligence, which is already starting to impact a lot of our products. And I'll give you a real quick example. I know I'm a little long-winded on this one. Adobe Stock, which is a stock content tool that's integrated with Creative Cloud, you can actually take an image. You can take a picture of your kid at the beach and say, find me something similar, because I really don't want to put my child on an advertisement, but I like that image. Drag it into that search tool, and it will automatically find you hundreds of images that are identical with no text, right? That's a pretty impactful thing.
Right.
Right?
crazy. So the one we were talking about this too is that if you're going to go into the AI space, you better be data obsessed. You know, we were talking about if you are going to start trying to utilize AI, particularly around your own data, you better have good data. And I think that's the biggest mistake I've seen people starting to make. We're talking about some FUBAR stuff. I think that's going to be what challenges and changes the AI space. The people who don't adopt to AI are going to be the ones who went in with bad data, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that gives us about 3 or 4 more minutes. We'd love to open it up to questions for the group. If you have questions about how to sell to these guys, or you want their phone number so you can sell them tomorrow, you know, they'll be glad to give it out. But what questions do we have from the group? All right, we've got a
You
couple.
guys are too shy, seriously.
Yeah, exactly. So I do have a question for another one that just sort of came to my mind, which was, we talked about adoption of these tools, right? How do you manage that adoption or lack of adoption? One second more. You know, we all have that one rep, right, who just won't adopt, right? But they still will perform. Any special tips or tricks you can share with the audience to handle the rebel?
For us, it's the carrot and the stick. Often if you tie, you tie the MBO, the behavior around an MBO to their comp plan.
Right. Okay.
Without making it too much of a stick, but, you know.
You just attach the carrot to the end of the stick and poke them in the eye?
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Hit them in the wallet.
To me, I think when you look at your sales folks, you really have to be thoughtful about where that salesperson is heading long-term and how am I developing them career-wise. And if they're not adopting and everyone else is, right, I get that sometimes you got a bad tool that just doesn't work for the force, okay? But if it's working for everyone else and it's not for that one salesperson, you have to ask, I think, a bigger question about what does this mean for them long-term, right?
Got it, great. I know we had a question.
Yeah, I was going to go to the flip side of that question, which is reps that go rogue and bring in their own tools. Any thoughts on that?
I was usually that guy that did that, so.
Nothing. They're brilliant.
As long as, you know, if you understand what's behind it, why they see a gap, then, and you can empathize and have compassion for it, then you can understand it. But if it's someone trying to skirt around a system or a process or an approval that goes against everything that we believe in, then it's, yeah.
That's it, yeah.
What's the motive?
What's the motive, right?
Yeah.
If they bring something to the table that can add value across the organization, great, right? But if it's something, you know, subversive, again, we have a different conversation to have, I think. Right?
Good question.
Any other questions from the audience? I know we have a mic passing around, so I want to give people a chance to grab the mic. Don't drop it, but just grab
One
it.
over here.
Yes.
How much of your approach is more of a, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, versus being proactive about finding a new tool? Like if you are using a certain tool and it's been great for you for 15 years, is that too long? And are you going to look for something that kind of advances the ball versus, you know, something that your team has been accustomed to and has been well adopted?
For Apttus, I mean, in this space, when I started 2 years ago, I think we were 650 people. We've more than doubled in 1 year. Our business is changing rapidly. So the business problems that we're solving today, we have to look into the crystal ball about what are the problems going to be 6 months from now and build out our infrastructure to be able to be nimble and get around that. So we are absolutely looking and thinking about, we've talked about this before, you know, six months, 1 year, 2 years down the road. And the decisions we're making now better be in line with what could happen.
For
Or else we
Adobe,
have a blockbuster on our hands.
the word static doesn't exist at Adobe.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. Even our core businesses, you know, Photoshop's been around forever, Acrobat's been around forever. If we're not thinking ahead, then we will lose that line of business. And our strategy is you continue improving at every single opportunity. You don't trade one new line of business for another one that's going away, right?
All right, well, I think that's all the time. If you have questions, I know maybe we'll go jump in the back real quick if you have a question for the panelists. take one more question back there. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen, for
Thank
joining
you.
us.